Sup you beautiful people. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Welcome back to another new episode of What If Naruto was taken by Yoda and trained to become a Jedi Knight. If you guys enjoy this what if, comment down below and let me know. And go ahead and check out other what ifs in the channel after watching this video. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a like, and also share this video with your friends. So now let's start this video. Marshada, Meltdown Cafe, 2 days earlier. The young boy named Boba Fett looked and felt extremely out of place as he handed over the credits to the bartender, receiving a drink and a matchbook in return. Being a roughly 11-year-old boy in the care of the apprentice to your deceased father, the best bounty hunter in the galaxy, was an odd experience. Especially when you didn't even know the person's name. Here's your drink. The bartender spoke as he ferried the drink over to his new guardian, which was difficult in the dimly lit corner of the bar. Feeling a little rebellious, Boba took a sip of his own drink and immediately started coughing. That tastes horrible. How can you stand to drink that? Boba complained as he handed over the drink. He did not enjoy the bitter burning sensation one bit. You get used to it at some point. His mentor chuckled a bit as he took another sip of his drink. Clearly the Mandalorian bounty hunter was looking to get as drunk as possible. Boba sighed. Ever since his father was murdered by the Jedi, he had been traveling around with this guy. Namely because they had stolen Slave Eye, and there was no way Boba could take it back by force. He wasn't too eager to be all on his own yet, anyways. We interrupt this local broadcast for a breaking news update. It's been reported that General Naruto Uzumaki, who was arrested early last week, has been convicted of espionage and murder charges, in what was to this reporter a curiously expedited trial. It is the position of this network that the proceedings were hastened in an effort to dissuade further disloyalty to the Republic amongst other systems, in the wake of the recent mass desertions, in response to the general's arrest. The Galactic News Station announced as to mixed reactions from the bar patrons. There were many bounty hunters in the bar that wanted to collect the bounty on that Jedi's head that had been placed there by various gangsters and criminal organizations, namely the Black Sun Pirates. The Separatists also had a massive bounty out for him. Others were a bit shocked by the news. The blonde Jedi was a war hero and had won the Republic many battles. To hear that this damn Boy Scout was arrested for treason wasn't something that clicked with them. Uzumaki has been previously hailed as a war hero for his victories at Destined and Renvar, but Supreme Chancellor Palpatine, a former close friend of the Jedi, has announced his suspicions that his victories were fabricated in order to allow the Jedi Master to rise in the Republic's ranks, in order to provide more intel to the Separatists. The Mandalorian Jedi will face the Senate for high treason against the Republic in a hearing that we're sure is to be held just as quickly as these court cases. The report finished with even more grim news for the blonde Jedi. So, he was a traitor, eh? Wonder why Dooku didn't tell Dad he was on our side. Boba thought as he viewed the news update, mildly interested. He held no love for the Jedi. They had killed his father, murdered him. It was fine by him if another one ended up dead. Looking over to his guardian, the young Boba raised an eyebrow. His guardian had tensed up slightly and was keenly listening to the news. Boba wished he could see his face. He's seen it before, of course, even though the guy seemed to like hiding it from the world whenever possible, but Boba wanted to see the look on his face, more than his face itself. I remember, he fought the Jedi back on Geonosis. Told me he'd faced him before. Maybe he feels disappointed on losing out on fighting a worthy opponent. Or maybe he's just weirdly celebrating that he's being jailed for life, maybe even executed if that treason charge sticks. Boba thought as he went back to his non-alcoholic drink after thinking of Geonosis. Truthfully, his guardian was thinking about something else. Terrace, 10th Army Headquarters Building. The air on Terrace was thick tonight. After the news of their general's so-called treason had reached them, they knew something was wrong. Some within the 10th Army thought that such a thing was impossible. Fox and King were locked in a heated argument with Bly. I said cut it out, King. And that goes for you too, Fox. This isn't about rank, it's about sanity. Be thankful we don't have our transponders on, otherwise we'd have MPs swarming this place arresting all of us for that kind of talk. CC 5052 Bly, Marshal Commander of the 327th Starfighter Corps, had finally decided to put his foot down. It hurt him greatly to speak ill of his fellow officers, as Bly had respected Naruto for rescuing Ayla on Destined as much as any other clone before his treason. He knew that Naruto was doomed, and he didn't want his brothers to meet the same fate. But these fools were damn near ready to disobey all orders, go AWOL and attempt to speak on the general's behalf at his upcoming trial. That was a fine recipe for get yourself thrown into the same boiling pot for whatever meal the Senate was using to brew Naruto soup. Bly silently wondered if that would taste like ramen. We're not saying anything incriminating. I'm at least suggesting that we politely ask to speak at his trial. Fox suggested. He had known Naruto the longest, and he knew that something was wrong. You really think the Senate gives a damn what a group of clones has to say about a damn traitor? 7th Legion Commander Adin spoke out against their plan. Unlike Bly, Adin didn't hold the same respect for Naruto. The two had got off on the wrong foot and never reconciled. It's not like I planned on going in there to take the whole proceeding hostage. Speaking of, why is the Senate hearing his case instead of a court? Fox questioned once more. It's a hearing for treason against the Republic and her people. The Senate represents the people. In this case, it's the prosecution and the defense. Treason proceedings aren't meant to be right and just judicial affairs. They're meant to be for handing death sentences, and to give the accused a small bit of extra time to build their defense. It's not exactly fair, but it's better than him being tried for all 3 crimes at once, and found guilty and executed immediately afterwards. Bly pointed out. It's alleged treason. They don't really have any concrete evidence. Those voice recordings are sketchy at best. How do we know those weren't fabricated by the separatists? They were thrown out by the courts in his espionage trial. The only thing they had were the intercepted messages, but there's no proof he actually wrote them. Just as someone with access to his clearance code did. Everything is circumstantial, King reminded. He was a valuable general who had won many battles for the Republic, being jailed on just circumstantial evidence. It didn't make any sense. Almost all evidence in cases like this are circumstantial. And those transmissions were enough to get him convicted, weren't they? The Senate has basis to try him on his conviction of espionage alone. Quite frankly, I am surprised this didn't happen sooner. Adin stated as Fox narrowed his eyes at him. What do you mean by that, trooper? Fox questioned, sensing that Bly was getting out of line. Fox was loyal to Naruto first and the Republic second, and that was clear to the fellow flag officers in the 10th. Bly merely rolled his eyes at him. Come on, Fox, don't you think it would have happened eventually? He has always harbored some sympathy for the separatists. I didn't expect him to go this far, but what happened happened. That's enough of this borderline seditious talk. It's time for my men to get some sleep. We just got back from Vandelholm, and I don't need any more of this on my mind, Bly responded as he turned to leave, not wanting to be a part of this. If he wasn't a traitor from the start, he turned traitor at some point. Perhaps he struck a deal with Dooku on Renvar. King wanted to reach for his vibroblade right there, and cut Adin's tongue out for daring to say that. What? You can't tell me you aren't the least bit curious how he survived those wounds. Doesn't make sense that Dooku wouldn't aim to kill, unless he had turned Naruto over to his side. That was the last straw, but Bly had firmly placed his hand on Adin's shoulder, and had begun ushering him towards the barracks. Sorry about that, that was too far. But my point still stands. We're just clones. We shouldn't get involved. Bly finished the conversion as he began marching Adin away, leaving Fox bewildered. Naruto had treated them as if they were his own brothers, and this is how they returned that loyalty. Why Iota? Fox was going to teach those bastards a lesson, but was stopped by King. He looked back in shock. Was King on their side too? Let them go. At least we know who we can trust now. King stated as Fox cooled his head and sat back down. We're not just clones. Naruto made sure each of us were taught that much, at least. Fox protested. You're right. And that's why it's needed for us to do what we do best. Think for ourselves. King affirmed his determination in helping Naruto. And how do you propose we do that? Fox questioned as King smirked. Now that we've got the dissenters out of the way, I think it's time you meet our supporters. King waved his hand. A few minutes later, a multitude of captains, lieutenants, and various sergeants from legions in the 14th Corps had been hiding and listening in. Notably, the officers of the 497th had shown up in full. This was never about speaking at his trial, was it? Fox raised an eyebrow in suspicion. King nodded. We all know Naruto is innocent. We all know what we have to do. You don't actually mean. Fox chuckled nervously. You know the Senate has already decided their verdict. King announced. There's no way Naruto is getting out of this without our help. Fox stood there stunned for a moment, but he quickly came to the same conclusion. Naruto was as much their brother as they were to one another. Well then, what are we going to do? Fox asked, curious to hear King's plan. Well, that's about as far as we got. We can't do anything. Not alone, at least. The second our cruiser approaches the system, it'll be surrounded by the entire CHDF and impounded, if not shot down on the spot. Ignoring those possibilities, we probably wouldn't get past the planetary shield anyways. King reasoned as Fox sighed. They would be outnumbered and outgunned, and even in a Star Destroyer they wouldn't last long. A big team is no good. We're going to need a small elite crew. Storm suggested. A small team could land on Coruscant in any old shuttle and wouldn't attract attention. Did you all forget about security? The place is going to be surrounded by Jedi and a senatorial guard, and I don't think anyone aside from King here is capable of taking on a Jedi Knight alone. Gamble reminded them that they were hopelessly outmatched. He should be more than enough. He took down a Sag Ventress, didn't he? That's something General Skywalker barely managed to do. Once we free the General, the two of you should be able to escape no problem. Spirit was optimistic as always. I got lucky against Ventress, and I had Naruto's help the entire fight. King dismissed these claims offhandedly, but the others weren't quite understanding him. Battle meditation, remember? King reminded them that Naruto had been keeping up his battle meditation ever since they entered the hangar. It was thanks to this power that Fox, Storm, and Fang managed to take down an acolyte. Naruto's power seemingly affected as far out as King was. which was odd considering that Naruto claimed his range was supposedly reduced if he remained mobile while using the technique. It shouldn't have been able to reach King. Anyways, these Jedi won't be cowards like her. The temple guard is seriously devoted and won't flee unless another Jedi shows up to relieve them. King continued. Stealth is our best option then, Fang surmised. It was his area of expertise, after all. Stealth will only get us to Naruto, it won't let us free him or get us out of there. Let's put a dampener on everyone's enthusiasm. Maybe we could hire someone, like a bounty hunter, Fox recommended. That raised a few whispers, but Stoic got up to rain on everyone's parade. What bounty hunter do you know that would dare to help Naruto Uzumaki, the fabled hunter of bounty hunters? As well as take on dozens of highly trained guards, and some of them probably being Jedi. Security around Naruto, and the Senate in general, would be absurd. He was constantly surrounded by about 20 of the Republic's finest, and no less than 4 temple guardsmen at any time. What about a really good bounty hunter? Like our father. Bulk offered a suggestion so simple that no one could really consider the brilliance behind it. It was kind of his trademark. Did your brain freeze in the clouds up there, big guy? It's sometimes comical how little you think about things. Fang poked fun at his brother's defect. Being nearly 230 centimeters, it probably takes a little longer for the fresh blood to reach your head. Don't be an asshole, Fang. There is some truth to his words. An elite bounty hunter the likes of Aura Singh or Cat Bane might be able to do the job, provided they had a capable support team. Flash was a jokester like Fang, but insulting his brothers for a quick laugh was strictly off limits. Maybe they could, but it doesn't matter. Clones aren't paid. We don't have the money for your average run-of-the-mill bounty hunter, let alone a well-renowned one. King answered as everyone frowned and thought over plan. And before anyone suggests it, Naruto's assets have almost definitely been seized. He doesn't have the money to pay them after the fact, either. Something had to be done. I have an idea. A somewhat sheepish voice spoke up from behind them, as sheepish as their identical voices could sound, at least. It was the new captain of the 3rd Inner Company, Commander Toad. Plenty of the old guard rolled their eyes and groaned, but King silenced them quickly with a single wave of his hand. Let's hear it then, Toad. King couldn't help but smile. This was what he was hoping for all along. Brain's company was always famous for its brilliant strategies. Palpatine's office, Coruscant, present day. Palpatine was scowling. Scowling at the fact that even after being rid of the Jedi that had been causing him so much trouble, he still managed to somehow be a thorn in his side. The Sith Lord may have underestimated the influence that Uzumaki had. The Republic army was thrown into chaos by the desertions of countless irregulars. The final number had still yet to be tallied. Still, he had to pay attention to the small committee that was gathered before him, as they discussed on some worrying issues, at least for them. This is pressing matter. A senator voiced his concerns as another one waved it away as another one from a mid-rim world frowned. Your world isn't under constant threat from separatist invasions. Our worlds are becoming a battleground, and we need those irregulars to ensure security, while the clones push forward, the senator stated. The core worlds may not bat an eye to the desertion of so many irregulars, but the mid-rim worlds were tucking their tails between their legs. Security in the mid-rim was rooted heavily in the irregular volunteers, but with them fleeing in droves, it left the worlds exposed to more than just separatist attacks, but also piracy, and just the fact that the threat of invasion was looming, made their economies shaky at best. No one wanted to invest in a world that was about to be bombarded by turbo-laser fire. Please, it is hardly a matter at all. Why should we bother the clone army with matters that should be handled by planetary security? An unconcerned senator from the core world stated. Palpatine merely kept quiet. He had wisely chosen senators that didn't have any previous interactions with the blonde to form the prosecution, citing a need for unbiased opinion, but it was all a farce. Many of the senators gathered here did not like the blonde Jedi, as he was quite open about his disdain for their exploitation of other systems for their own wealth. The others were merely seat fillers, so that it wasn't obvious what the Chancellor was planning. We have mass desertions on our hand. Current count says more than 2 million irregulars have just up and deserted from the GAR, including all of the ones under the 10th Army. Those irregulars were important in keeping the peace on occupied planets, as well as being the core of our response teams, but now we'll have to waste clones on garrison forces, until we can replace them. The senator reasoned as much as he could in his panic. It was a waste of the clone army to tie down every planet they liberated from the separatists. Your concern is wasting the clones' time. The mid-rim worlds are the most exposed they have ever been. Any separatist invasion will face no resistance. These desertions leave more than just the mid-rim exposed. The separatists could find a crack, another senator shouted. It was clear to him that the core world did not concern themselves with the safety of the mid-rim and even outer rim worlds, only themselves. There are plans for a new bill which will provide funding for an additional order of clones. The purpose was to fund an order of 5 million, but we will have to amend that number to accommodate these desertions, but I will see to it that it is passed in the next few months. I think an additional 3 million troops will satisfy your concerns, Senator. Of course, we may have to levy higher taxes on your worlds to pay the difference. Palpatine reassured the senators from the mid-rim, at the location of the heaviest fighting for the moment, and it only made sense that they would have to pay to defend themselves. Another 8 million clones. The Republic has had a standing galactic army in the tens of millions since the new Sith Wars. Never mind fulfilling the purchase order, how do you plan to maintain it? Not just in terms of rations and supplies, but transportation and support. You'll have to order another 10,000 Star Destroyers. At least that many. The cost will be outrageous. You can't expect the mid-rim to bear that burden on its own. The senator said, incredulous. Palpatine was nigh proposing a military state. The military situation was bad, but it couldn't possibly be that grim, could it? The mid-rim would not be able to support it alone. The inner rim and core worlds will have to contribute as well. Palpatine alleviated the senator's concerns, but the Chancellor Palpatine, you're not suggesting. We are all in this conflict together, Senator. If the mid-rim falls to the separatists, the inner rim and colonies will be next. If we lose the agri-worlds there, then the core will not be able to feed itself. Our surrender would be inevitable at that point. I'm sure the people on Brental can afford it, Senator. The Chancellor shut down the senator's protests. It was fueled by insatiable greed and an unearned sense of importance. Numbers aren't our only problem. There's also the fact that this news has had a devastating effect on the morale of our troops. I have to question if we can win without Naruto's leadership. The senator continued as Palpatine did not like where this was going. He could not allow support for Naruto to grow within a committee he himself had made. But we were winning without him. He was never truly on our side. Another senator rebuked him, causing him to sigh. The gravity of the situation seemed lost of most of them. To the mid-rim, Naruto was a hero. He was the one who was willing to defend them against the separatists. Let's assume for a minute that he's actually innocent. With the way the Confederacy has been hammering us these past few months, I'm no longer confident in our victory without him leading the troops. This was a good point the senator brought up. Palpatine would have to order Dooku to reel in the ferocity of their attacks, as was their original plan, before Naruto proceeded to shut down their invasion of Fonder, and take valuable natural resources from Destined, almost a year sooner than intended. Dooku was forced to use the full might of the Confederacy for a moment there. We could arrange a conditional pardon for him after the Senate votes to convict. Another senator stated as Palpatine had enough of it. He would not allow such a thing to even be mentioned. He wanted Naruto dead. That is not an option, Senator. He would defect the second he is back on the battlefield. It would cost of more lives if he did it during a battle. Palpatine reasoned as everyone present thought over it. You just couldn't trust a traitor, even after they were pardoned. Be that as it may, the problem still stands. Who will defend our worlds? The clone army as it is will be stretched too thin if they are tied to defend planets in the mid-rim. The next batch will take time, but what will happen till then? We won't be able to go on the offensive. A rational senator voiced his opinion. With the clones tied to defending planets, there would be no major offensives in the coming months, until new clones were ready. Then the clone army will have to make do with what they have as of now. We cannot defend all the planets. A senator replied, outraging the few mid-rim senators. You would rather let our worlds fall, than defend them, a senator shouted, standing up in rage as he glared at the fool. Palpatine saw that this committee would soon break if nothing was done. Senators, please. Rest assured that the clone army will defend your worlds. I will stall what of our planned offensives I can, and order the Grand Army of the Republic to defend until the next batch of clones is ready. Palpatine interjected as he smiled kindly, but behind his mask he was grinning. He could finally prolong the war and further increase his power. This brief hurdle was ultimately a win in his eyes. Terrace, 10th Army Headquarters, 2 days later. The mood on Terrace hadn't changed. On the outside it seemed fine, but on inside it was a different story. Fox and King had to keep things under wraps, lest their intentions of breaking out Naruto were made known to clones still loyal to the Republic. However, everything had taken an interesting turn now that Ross had returned from the Battle of Iriadu with Tarkin. You're right, we need to intervene, was simply what Ross stated to King, who was surprised by his support. Ross had served in the Republic for a very long time. For him to suggest something that would forever end his career as a Republic officer was an unexpected move to say the least. We have been planning on that as well, but we don't have the finances to break him out. Fox explained Ross their plan of hiring an outside source to break Naruto out. Think you could spare us some change to hire someone? Flash suggested, but Ross shook his head. No point. The entire 10th Army is most likely under watch. I wouldn't be surprised if all my accounts are out of service until after his trial. Ross responded. The Senate would get the execution they wanted, even if they had to use underhanded methods. Great, back to square one. Storm stated as he threw his hands up. He hated this. He hated it when he couldn't deal with the problem with a blaster. Not exactly. Toad spoke up as he held a datapad in his hand. Everyone turned to face him as he worked on his datapad. The general, prior to the war, went on many missions in different systems. So he's pretty well linked to several systems and their people. I've been keeping an eye on the said senators of these worlds. Toad started as everyone nodded, waiting for him to finish. People like Bail Organa of Alderaan. Fox pointed out as Ross shook his head. Organa had always been a close friend of Naruto's for years. Organa is a die-hard Republic supporter. He believes that the system works, and he won't abandon his principle to break out a single man who helped his people, no matter how much he likes him. He could, however, be an ally in the future. Ross responded as Toad nodded, pressing a few buttons on his pad. Right, but I think there is one that will be willing to help. Naruto wouldn't like her getting dragged into this, but I'm certain she'll help. She's been doing everything in her power to delay the proceedings. She's caused quite an uproar and is getting on Palpatine's nerves daily. Toad stated as everyone wondered who it was he was talking about. If that's true, then I think have someone in mind that we can hire, though I don't think Naruto would appreciate it very much either. King offered as everyone nodded. They're going to be expensive too. The guy is so skilled he actually demands the rewards for his own bounty hunts. They were going to need the best of the best for this one, and that sounded like just a ticket. The Senate building is going to be too heavily guarded for a single man. Even Naruto would be overwhelmed. Ross pointed out. A single bounty hunter wasn't going to be enough. That's why King and I will be going as well. Fox stated as King turned to him in approval. With or without help, King was going to rescue his brother, but he didn't want to speak for Fox. So am I. You're going to need me if you want to be able to sneak in undetected. Once we spring the boss though, it'll probably be all you guys. Fang stated. As the captain of the covert ops, it was a no-brainer that he would want to be on board. If King is going, then you can count me in. Blitz stated, he wasn't about to let King go on a potentially suicidal mission alone. I'm with you, too. Storm chimed in, wanting to free the general as well. Toad was also going to volunteer, but King stopped them. Sorry, gents, but with me and Fox gone, we need someone to take care of things here. You're still recovering and I need you to manage things here, Toad. Once news hits that Naruto has escaped, I'm sure there will be defectors from other legions. King stated and Toad nodded in approval. Naruto had always protected Brain's company from being too ridiculed in the first month before Wiz's promotion had gone through. He wanted to go, but knew that King's plan made more sense. He would stay behind and keep watch over things in the 497th until the time was right. I'm definitely going. Flash stepped forward as everyone slowly understood why. Flash was under the direct command of Siri many times, and was considered a right-hand man. She had also bestowed him his name. The two had been pretty close from the get-go, and Flash knew she would want him to rescue her little brother. Good, we're probably gonna need a getaway driver, and you're the best one there is. King replied as he looked around. I think we got some of the best clones in the entire 10th Army on our side, other than Storm that is. Fang commented as Storm eyebrow twitched. I'm better than you, Butterfingers. Storm stated as everyone chuckled. Alright boys, ready up. Ross, you should contact this senator. And, I'll give you the name of the bounty hunter, too. King stated as he took Toad's datapad and uploaded some information before handing it off to Ross. Operation Lights Out was a go. Senate building, Loyalist Committee chambers. News traveled fast in the Galactic Senate, and news about one of the top Jedi generals, the youngest and perhaps the best of them being put on trial for treason. Well, that traveled really fast. The Chancellor himself was pushing for the trail to end as fast as he could make it, and most were content to simply help him glide it along. But that's not to say that there wasn't any opposition. Ironically, the Loyalist Committee, the group of senators who had argued so vehemently for steadfast adhesion to the Republic, were some of those standing most in the way of Palpatine's crusade against the former Jedi. We need to find more ways to support Naruto. I can't believe that he is capable of committing treason, and the Senate is poised to convict him in a few days. Padme reasoned with her fellow senators, but they all began to look unsure. With the war raging on and their worlds at risk of separatist invasion, this was not the time to have a skilled general being charged for treason. Still, the Chancellor was going to get what he wanted, and applying pressure was not out of his realm. They were beginning to feel his grip tighten around them. Kander won't believe it, Senator Amidala. The bloated senator from Rylith, Orn Free-Ta, the leader of the committee, had already made his decision to back off. Rylith was currently occupied by the Confederacy, and if he had any chance of the Republic sending a task force to liberate his homeworld, it wasn't going to be through opposing the Chancellor. As usual, I agree with you, Senator Amidala. We need to stand by and support Naruto. He's done too much for the Republic to be cast aside as a traitor in such a rushed trial. The Chancellor wants to make this go away as quickly as possible in the name of stability, but he has forgotten justice in his course. Bale stated, surprising many. Bale always said he had faith in the system, yet here he was, attempting to go against the courts. For Bale, however, it was more than just another Jedi. Naruto's first solo mission as a Jedi Knight had saved Alderaan. He uncovered a conspiracy by House Al that would have saw corrupt government officials gaining power and defecting to the Confederacy. The evidence isn't in Uzumaki's favor. Senator Mon Mothma of Chandrila warned. Recordings. Usage of the dark side of the Force. Clearly the blonde Jedi was not what he claimed to be in their eyes. As you recall, the recordings were thrown out, Senator. The only evidence they have is that Naruto was at the scene of the attack with the distress beacon activated. Tell me what you would do if hostile starships suddenly ambushed you. Bail reasoned with Mon Mothma. Evidence thrown out in the courts is not inadmissible to the Senate. She argued politely. She could do more good for the Republic within the Chancellor's favor rather than outside it. Perhaps she could eventually convince him to give up his emergency powers. There isn't any proof that Grievous was even there. A lot of people are saying Uzumaki did it alone, and that Tachi was caught by surprise. Wouldn't certainly catch me by surprise if my closest ally turned on me. In that situation, I don't think I'd be in the right frame of mind to defend myself even if I saw it coming. Senator Lexi Dio of Ida was a close friend of Padme, and she was beginning to worry that the Chancellor would come after her if she persisted too long. The fact that Grievous was there isn't so much in question as whether or not Mr. Uzumaki was a part of the attack. Rhodian Senator Anaconda Far tried to calm the more fervent senators from making mistakes. And I think what you're all forgetting that his story has multiple holes in it. Like what? Padme asked with a twinge of spite, her face reddening. Her Uncle Ono was a close family friend and one of her mentors, and to have him against her was wounding. Like how did Grievous know where to find them? There was no tracker found on the ship, despite Uzumaki's claim otherwise, and knowledge of the route is highly confidential. Only the Jedi Council and the Jedi supervising the mission know the specific route taken. You're not suggesting that someone within the Jedi Council set him up, are you? I was under the impression that he was well liked by most of them, and at the very least grudgingly respected by the others. Ono retorted. Padme did her best to remain calm, but she was failing. Thankfully, Bail stepped up to the plate. Grievous is a cyborg, he could have easily removed a tracker on the ship from outside. He doesn't need air like you or I do, Bail suggested. This relieved Padme, but the others were not so thrilled by his continued support of the blonde. That doesn't mean there was a tracker, Senator Organa. We have to accept the facts as they are presented to us, not how we would like them to appear. Orn Free-Ta tried to reframe the argument, but it fell on deaf ears to Padme. I know Naruto personally, there's no way he would have ever killed Master Tachi. All he ever talked about, aside from boasting about himself, was boasting about her. The two were inseparable whenever they were able to be together. I know this is heartbreaking for you, Senator Amidala, but we cannot continue our support of Naruto. Our careers depend on it. Ta tried to reason, but his words had inadvertently upset Padme even further. So your career is more important than the life of an innocent man? Padme asked, now furious at the wealthy Twi'lek senator. The two had a difficult relationship despite being political allies, but his decadence and self-indulgence had shown its ugly head too many times. That's not what I meant, Padme. And the courts have already decided that he is guilty. There's no point in tying up the Senate over a pointless treason trial. Ta tried to explain himself, but Padme had heard enough. Then I will give him political asylum on Naboo. Padme proposed, shocking everyone. What she had suggested was akin to political suicide, and possibly even actual suicide, should the courts decide to prosecute her too in the aftermath. Naboo would not doubt face political and economic isolation from the Republic. For Padme, however, it didn't matter. Naruto was someone she had wronged, and she would do everything to right her failures. You do realize that if he's given political asylum on your world, assuming the Chancellor doesn't have you arrested on the spot, will mark both him and all of Naboo as potential separatist turncoats. I doubt that Chancellor Palpatine would hesitate to secure his homeworld against any Confederate threat. You'd be turning your home into an inevitable battlefield. As Sir Paddy of Sumeria warned Padme, who only glared with more determination. I am against this plan too, Padme. I know he's a hero and I know you care for him deeply, but he's not worth the suffering of an entire innocent world. We should continue to oppose the Chancellor and stall the proceedings. Perhaps the Jedi's own investigation will be able to come to a conclusion in that time. Bail was beginning to get worried. He wanted to save Naruto without damning Padme in the process. Senator Organa, please see reason. If he is not a traitor, then surely the courts would find him as such. You have always had faith in the justice of the Republic. Don't tell me it has suddenly faltered now. Lexi questioned Bail and then looked over pleadingly to Padme, small tears forming in her eyes at the thought of Padme being hauled off in chains like a criminal. Bail pursed his lips and thought. Everything was working against them. The Chancellor was amassing more political power by the day, and Bail had no choice. The support for Naruto was too little, and what little of it there was were beginning to remain silent, fearful of political isolation. You're right. The courts will be the judge now. Bail gave up as Padme looked at him, betrayed. Padme tried to speak, but Bail stopped her by raising his hand. The Jedi have a plan to help Naruto. Our best course of action is to argue for a stay of execution. Then we will have the Jedi on our side for an appeal. Bail's concession seemed to earn the approval of the other senators, but Padme stood up in protest. By the time this war is over he could well be into his 30s. Padme sighed in frustration as she stormed out of the conference room. Clearly the other senators weren't interested in helping a true hero of the Republic. Everyone started to split into smaller conversations. Eventually the meeting had ended, and they began heading back to their offices and personal transports. Bail looked around cautiously, making sure no one was watching him before he slipped silently into a vacant room. Pulling out a small device from under his robes, he activated the transmitter and brought another device to his ears. This was an archaic form of communication, but it wasn't as easily traced, and that was a factor Organa needed. Still, he was careful to disguise his voice and use the designated codenames. RD, did you hear everything? I'm afraid I'll be needing your services after all. The plan is approved. Extract the target and bring him to point 3R4 and 2. He will be safe from the Chancellor's prying eyes on my homeworld. He spoke into the transmitter before destroying it and pocketing the receiver. Bale turned to the nearby window and reduced the opacity to see the setting sun. He always loved the sunsets on Alderaan the best, but there was something about Coruscant that was just as charming. Bale turned his thoughts towards the future, realizing that something had to be done to stop the Senate from having all of its power turned over to Palpatine. The Chancellor's use of emergency powers is getting out of hand. There is no justice in this rushed trial. If I cannot act openly, then I must rebel in the shadows. Hot space. Boba sighed as he slouched down in the cockpit of Slave Eye, sitting next to his dad's protege with a small scowl. He'd left Boba alone in the ship again last night, and spent it with some red-haired lady. The helmeted man was working on the flight controls as the ship slowly started light off, heading to who knows where. They had been moving planet to planet, system to system doing small jobs. Where are we going now? Boba questioned, already accepting that the ship was now in the possession of this man for now, since he was too inexperienced to fly solo. Don't know. The armored bounty hunter responded as the ship flew in space, leaving the planet behind. Boba let out a long sigh as he looked on at the many passing ships. Nar Shaddaa was a hive of scum and villainy with criminals and bounty hunters coming and going hourly. Typically, a bounty hunter would find it easy game hunting bounties on a planet like Nar Shaddaa, but it wasn't. The Hutts controlled this planet, and the Hutt families were powerful. Their influence was so great that even the Republic left them alone. Most of these criminals were protected by the Hutts. The sound of an incoming transmission drew Boba's attention. The long-distance transmission, Boba thought. A transmission like that usually meant a high-profile mission that paid a lot. The pilot of the ship next to Boba for a minute accepted the call as a hologram of a hooded figure appeared. Thanks for listening. I do hope you enjoyed. If you want the next part of this video, like, subscribe and comment down below, and turn on the bell notification. And also check out other videos that I have created and enjoy. See you in the next video. Peace.